Welcome, dear listeners, to the WIP show brought to you by Keemiya Creatives, where we dive deep into the world of writing and creativity. I'm Namrata, your host and the founder of Keemiya Creatives. WIP stands for Writing in Progress, and that's exactly what we are all about here. Each week, we bring you inspiring conversations with talented writers, delving into their journeys, their challenges, and the stories behind their stories. From seasoned authors to aspiring wordsmiths, we explore the nooks and crannies of the writing process. Whether it's overcoming writer's block, finding inspiration in the unlikeliest of places, or simply navigating the wild, wonderful world of words, we are all here for it. So grab your favorite writing mug, settle into your coziest writing nook, and join us as we celebrate the beauty and the chaos of the writing life. Our guest for today is Dr. Shalini Mullick. Shalini is an author and a practicing doctor specializing in respiratory pathology. Her book, Stars from the Borderless Sea, published by Readomanina in 2022, was longlisted for the AutHer Awards 2023 in the debut category. Shalini was awarded a jury appreciation citation at the UNFPA Lardley Media and Advertising Awards for Gender Sensitivity in 2022. Her stories on women's identity have won many short story contests and 2 Orange Flower Awards, Fiction 2022 and LGBTQ Issues 2021. She is known for her insightful and thought-provoking content. She has been an invited speaker at literary events like the Delhi Literature Festival, Women in Literature Festival, Midnight at Bookstore, House of Harmony Spring Festival, and the Golden Door Dialogues. She is a columnist and panelist for platforms like Ishi, Ananke, Beyond the Box, Women's Web, and Incredible Women of India. She is a frequent guest for events and career counseling sessions in educational institutes. She also has been a guest on audio and video podcasts. Shalini is the head of Department of Pathology at the National Institute of Tuberculosis and Respiratory Diseases, India. She is a graduate of the Lady Hardinge Medical College, New Delhi, and has trained and worked at some of the most reputed organizations in India. She is an expert and resource person for health-related issues for magazines and scientific journals. Today, we will be discussing her latest book, The Way Home, also published by Readomanina this year. Hello, Shalini. Welcome to the WIP show.
Hi, Namrata. Thank you so much for having me here.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, Shalini. So the first question that we have for you today is, how did the story of Ananya, Neil, and Roy come to you?
So this book was written, like many others, during the pandemic. I started it during, that brutal second wave. And how the story came to me was that there was so much grief around us. And that's a whole, that's a very important part of the book. And there was grief and there was loss and everyone was just struggling and there was absolutely no respite and no outlet, at that moment for people to process the absolutely phenomenal grief that they were going through. And I wanted to write about that in some way. More than that, as a doctor, I was actually very, I was touched by the struggles of the doctors because, although I was not on the front line at that time, but, people would call and ask, can you arrange oxygen? And you felt so, so helpless. And, and people, I had nothing to give. And that just feels terrible. So honestly, that's how the book started. And this is going to sound very strange, but this was going to be a book about COVID. And this was going to be a book about the doctors' grief and their struggle, about how they continue to work and they are, despite their own personal losses. And I did write it like that. And that is why Anya and Roy are doctors. But by the time, of course, the book took its own time and it had its own journey. So by the time we were ready to publish and we went into, we started looking at the book from that perspective. The feedback that I got was that COVID's over. People don't want to relive that trauma again, know. And I really didn't take to it well. I'm being very, very honest. When my publisher said that, I don't want a book about COVID. He was very clear. He said, I want a distance between COVID and the reader. And that's exactly what I was writing about. And then I took almost 2 months to figure out myself out. And then we came to this. My editor was thankfully very, very, she was very understanding about where I was coming from. And Indrani is a lovely person. So, when we spoke and we got together to figure this out, it came to the fact that loss is universal. Grief is universal. Struggles are universal. So, we embraced the larger theme of the struggle. And I decided to take COVID out of the book. It was not easy because, both it was not easy rewriting it also, of course. And it was not easy for me as emotionally as a medical practitioner. But keeping the theme as grief, because it doesn't have to be COVID grief is not different from other grief, right? If Anya is a doctor who's lost someone, it didn't matter how she's lost her sister. What mattered to the book, to the reader, was how she processes that. So the idea, how it came and how it turned out are actually very different, which does happen, I think, in the world of writing. So that's how it happened. Anya and Roy came to me then because a lot of doctors also went through a phase where, they were ready to quit. Frankly speaking, I have friends who gave up medicine, at least temporarily, because the stress was just too much. Neil came to me from, the youngsters I see around us all the time, the pressures. I mean, my own elder one is 18 and all set to go to college. So, all the pressures, the JEE results come, it comes on the first page. And there's so much peer pressure, even without there being pressured. Like, I always tried never to pressure my children. But, whenever they would be stressed, they would be like, then you will say we didn't do well. Because the world around us is demanding that of them. So what happens when they can't? So I mean, I thought I was always this really cool, really nice parent. No, but no, it's okay. You do what you like. But I'm just one person in their ecosystem. They're just bombarded. And then they're like, you'll talk about that cousin who's gone to IIT and that one and that one. So all this adds up to a lot of pressure. I actually went through moments when I was like, did I do something wrong? Because, from day one, I've been like trying to be this very cool mom. So then I realized that the pressure is all around us, even when we talk in front of our kids in the family, someone's got a bigger job or blah, blah, blah. And what happens when the child is not able to keep up to that? Then they go through life feeling making wrong choices and suffering because of it. So Neil came to me from there. So what happens is that essentially there's so much noise around us that a lot of us are not able to hear our own selves, you know. And that's what I wanted to bring out in Neil. And it was really important to me that I do that. So that's how the story as such came.
This is very interesting that you share this because I now remember reading an article sometime in towards end of 2021 where some of the top sellers, top five from the top five publishers across UK and US were now changing their stories. So they were like, it was romance when I'd submitted, but now because it's pandemic, they want people to be not meeting in bars or clubs. They want them to have social distancing because otherwise it will be like, what world are we talking about? It doesn't make sense. Then I'm like, now I'm thinking, how should I make them date when they are in social distancing? So now, when you talk about this, it suddenly reminded me of that. That makes sense. He's like, I'm trying to do a scene where he's killing him, and now we have to figure out that they might just be masked. So how can you identify him when he's masked? Mystery thriller. So yes, you are right. Writers do go through these changes that which are unexpected and which are maybe beyond control that we see around. So, like as you said, the characters in your book each face significant personal struggles, something that is common in both your books so far. So, how do you develop these characters and their respective journeys?
So first is that, I mean, when you walk the planet for long, you realize that everyone's lives have been complicated and that, that shine just sort of dissipates. And how I make their characters is that they all have a very, very strong backstory, why they are who they are today. And that backstory often does not find place in a book because there's no space, right? But at the same time, it's influencing every single thing that they are doing right now. So it has to come through. I have to believe in their backstory, in why is Anya this chirpy, impatient little girl? Oh, she's not little anymore, but she's still chirpy. She behaves like a little girl because she's always had a protection of her elder sister. She's had a elder sister and a very, very protective relationship with her. So that will come through in her personality, right? The elder child who's more responsible will have a different personality. So I need to know first where they're coming from. And then their journeys, well, they have to grow, because at the end of the day, that is what life is all about, So how they deal with whatever's coming their way and how they grow through whatever's happening. So that will often be a very subtle or a very, very slight kind of a change, but it has to keep moving throughout the book. And that can be a challenge, especially because what happens is that you're not, etching out. If you haven't etched out with depth, then you don't know how your character is going to respond in a situation. Because if you have like in this book, there are three protagonists. All three of them have responded differently to the same thing, even if they're watching a rainbow or if they are, visiting the waterfalls, their responses to those are different. So I try and think about, again, that the source of that lies in the backstory, which is probably not being told to the reader, but it has to come through. So I try and do that. And in the first book and in the second book, there's one more similarity. It's about choices. You make a choice. Usually, as they say, it is cliched, but it is true that the easy one, is not going to be the right one for you in the long term. So in all of them, they have to make a choice. They have to stick by it, be ready for whatever comes after that. Like for Neil, he's taken such a huge step. He's overcome his own lack of confidence. He's taking a huge step by, starting a new career afresh. He's going to have to deal with it if things don't go right, right? But at the same time, he has to have the courage to do it. So that's what I try and think about, that is this person really growing through this choice, or is the person limited to their own comfort zone, their little safe spot? And I try and do it like that. And then I just hope that it comes through for the readers.
That's a very interesting process because I have loved your characters. I'm sure you must have read that about in both my reviews. And I love the aspect of that, where you have spoken about the imperfectness, if that's the right word that I would like to use, because many people just focus on the perfect. Everything is not perfect.
Yeah.
And but still, imperfect people can still be lovable. They are happy. They can make happy relationships. They can have fulfilling lives, fulfilling careers, and it does not make them bad. Being imperfect does not make you bad. And I like that about your characters because I see a part of me that, because I had a disturbed childhood or because I have this ABC as minuses, it doesn't make me a bad person or a person who's not a good friend or something. So that relatability, is what attracts me the most in your characters.
Yeah.
So, as we discussed, your writing focuses on human relationships and the bonds we share, while also touching upon sensitive topics like mental health, confronting inner demons, and loss. So, can you elaborate on your writing process with a special focus on these themes?
So yeah, it is. I mean, my writing is emotion heavy, as I like to put it. It does focus a lot on emotions and their nuances. See, a relationship is a very nuanced thing, and I've said this before about Stars from the Borderless Sea, and I say it again that in any relationship, only those two people know what's happening, where the other, and sometimes even they have entirely different scenarios or stories to tell about it. So, and why that is so is because I believe hugely in the power of human connections and relationships. Strong connections, strong relationships, strong friendships, they rejuvenate me, they recharge me. And things which are not nice and things which are not healthy or toxic, they drain me. And I've seen enough of both. So I believe very strongly in the power that our connections with each other give us. I believe very strongly in relationships. I'm very grounded in family. I find it very difficult to write bad parents. I mean, I just can't write bad parents. It's just my thing. I'm going to have to work on it. So I'm very rooted in family. I'm very emotionally grounded. Family emotionally grounds me a lot. And I also believe that that is also, and I know that all families are not the same and all families are not nice, and they don't have to be. Mine is also imperfect, but my relationships with them are very important to me. And I'm from this big Punjabi family where you have so many relatives, and there are many whom I don't like, but I still like meeting them. So I'm not saying that it's a perfect world, but having said that, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to healing, when it comes to knowing ourselves, that's a very important part of me. For example, um, all of us have, among our relationships, among our friends, we all have people who are not good for us. And I've met those also, even within the family. So I feel it's very important to be able to know who they are, to be able to process how we engage with them and interact with them, because on a day-to-day basis, these kind of people are not good for you and they affect mental health. So all families are wearing shades of gray. But the thing here is that mental health is a direct consequences of our relationships with the people around us, good and bad both. So I want to bring that upfront. I want to talk about how mental health issues happen, how they affect us, and how it's more important how we deal with them, rather than go into a blame game or go into a negative loop of why did I let things happen to me and blah, blah, blah. You have to be able to move forward. And unfortunately, when it comes to families, you're the only one moving forward. The families usually don't. So I get all those dynamics and I want to explore them little by little. And how I do it is basically by not judging. If I've already judged my character, then there's nothing left for you to judge in them, right? I have to let you find whatever you want to find in that character. I may like somebody, I may not feel that someone's comments are body shaming because I may not be aware. And that's not to make it correct, but that is the truth. But at the same time, you are allowed to interpret a character in your own way. If a character is not good for you, if a character is not working, you're absolutely free to interpret it. So I try not to judge it. We are all shades of gray, and I have to let that grayness be there. And that's what I've tried to show in the parents of these three young people. They are shades of gray. None of them are perfect parents, but that is the ecosystem that they've grown up in, and they have to make their way through it. So that's about it. I think about writing about relationships. The other thing why I write about relationships is because I truly believe that a lot of us are not ourselves in relationships. And when I explore a depth, or when I show something happening or something not happening, or someone not realizing their full potential, uh, I want people to step back and think about which relation. I'm not just talking about partners, I'm talking about all relationships. Which relationship nurtures you? Which of your relationships, fills you with good stuff? And which of it sort of leaves you, there's a lot of times when it's like, it's okay. Are you settling for okay? Why are you settling for okay? So those nuances have to come up. And I hope that they do, I guess.
Oh, they definitely do. They make you think and they question you. I would definitely say that. I remember reading your first
Right.
collection twice actually, because it took me a while. It was so much onto the face that I had to distance myself. Sometimes stories can actually rattle you so much emotionally. And I think it released in 2022, and after the pandemic and all that, we were just trying to come to back to that normalcy. And it was a while that I was reading an emotional read. I had stopped reading emotional reads. I stopped watching emotional movies because it was a very triggering time for me. So I remember this, that yeah, but I like the fact that when books make you question, they make you think. They don't give the thought to you. They don't conclude, like in nonfiction or books that are on self-help, they give you a thought that this is what you're supposed to think. But in your writing, I've never felt that. I'm like, you leave the thinking on me. You're just asking me a question and making me think, oh, did I just miss that? Did she just say something about that? So I really admire that. I would say that.
Thank you.
So we come to the next question. How did your personal experiences and observations influence the writing of this book? Are any of the characters or events inspired by real life?
Okay, so as I said that, yeah, it was everything happening around me that, especially Anya's character, definitely, everything around me because yeah, as I said that this was supposed to be a book about COVID, and it was directly influenced by everything happening around me. So when I'd written that, during COVID they go to Goa, I was actually reading the Goa edition of the newspaper and trying to match it with what's happening then and all that. So, definitely, Anya's character is based on a lot of people I saw struggling at that time. Uh, because I knew people who simply were struggling here with work, and they had family abroad who was sick, or vice versa. I had friends who obviously could not come here at that point of time, and their families are here. They had elderly parents or even siblings who were falling sick, and there was nothing that they could do. So that sheer helplessness was very, very frustrating. I think in many ways, this book was my venting. And obviously that venting did not go into the final book that, all of you have read, and it was edited, but I don't think I could have written the book till I had got all of that out of my system. Right. So yes, directly influenced. As I said, Neil, a lot of youngsters around me. I would keep, sort of shadowing the young trainees who come to work for us and, trying to see, because I would ask them, what do you want to do next? And they would be like, we don't know, ma'am. And I would be like, no, 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 you have to start thinking, you have to start. And then, then I used to step back and I used to be like, okay, I let them be and, let them find their own way. So these two definitely, because it's difficult not to, wear your experienced hat and tell them, no, you do this, this is good for you. You have to let them be on their own journey. So these two definitely. Uh, One person I really want to talk about is the Anya's grandmother. So she's very close to my heart, Beji. She has a bit of both my grandmoms in her, because I think a lot of families have that one elderly person who's got a lot of wisdom, but who does not, thankfully, force it down everybody, and that person's usually a female. The men will generally, they'll have jnana and, how you should do things. So then these are like the pillars of the family who will have a lot of sensible, pragmatic advice to offer, who can become your sanctuary, whom probably you have bonded well with as children. So a lot of, and it doesn't have to be a grandparent, it can even be aunts or uncles. A lot of families will have these one or two people. And so that she's like directly modeled on both my grandmoms. In fact, I've written about her hand smelling always of Nivea. And that blue box of Nivea is something that I always associated with both my grandparents, because they always had that. I mean, there was nothing else at that time, right? So they always had that big blue box. So she's directly this thing. And I want to talk about one more character, because in this book, honestly, I felt very bad because the other characters have not been talked about. It's always been Anya, Neil, and Roy. The other character is Dr. Kinney, where I've shown her struggling with her own grief. So like I said earlier, it was a book about COVID. So even her husband would have, passed away because of COVID, and I deleted that. She's a widow, relatively recently widowed, and she has her own grief and she's dealing with it in her own way, even though she's coping, she's back at work. So again, no time or no avenue to process the grief. That was what was happening around me in one word, in one phrase around. And that's what I wanted to show. Because what happens is, COVID or no COVID, when people are grieving or people are sad, what do people around them come and tell them, अरे यार बहुत time हो गया, let it go. Can't let it go. Her journey is her journey, my journey is my journey. You cannot put a time limit on grieving. If someone's grieving, they've not processed their emotions yet, you can't tell them, hey, it's been a year, stop. But that's exactly what the people around you do, right? Or worse, they'll come and tell you, Arey yaar, see, you still have XYZ thing going for you. Look at her, she doesn't have anything. Grief is not a contest. I'm not saying that someone's grief is more or less than mine. I'm just feeling mine really strongly and you're feeling yours, right? So why, I mean, the people around us, they really make it worse sometimes. And even the most loving families and friends can do that. So I shudder to think about, the other kind. So for me, that Dr. Kinney's character was very important. And again, she was modeled on a lot of people of that age group whom I see who don't have any avenue to process their griefs because they don't have those strong friendships also. The youngsters have, a different kind of friendship. So she's alone, she's working, she's doing everything. But still, there are moments when, she's not able to handle her grief, when she's setting up the Christmas tree and all that. And that's when we can connect with each other, be there for each other, show that little bit of kindness, right? So I mean, other than of course Anya and the main protagonist, these are the people who I really worked hard on, characterizing. So, but out of all of these, BG was the one, I can I tell you something about BG? So when I made her character, I wanted her to be like this really progressive and really cool grandmom. And she was going to know about Zoya's, this thing, sexual choices. I mean, like she would have sensed it, but more important than that, you're younger than me, so I don't know if you'll get this. So when we were kids, there was this Pakistani TV serial, Dhoop Kinare, where the protagonist is a very cute, peppy young girl, and she has a short hair, and her name is Zoya. And she falls in love with a senior doctor who's very brooding types. He was called the Amitabh Bachchan of the Pakistani TV at that time. It was just one. That time, we used to be crazy about it. We used to buy video cassettes and all. And she falls in love with the brooding, tall, dark, handsome guy. So I actually, for me, BG was someone who has binged on those TV serials, and that's why she calls her granddaughter. So yeah, I wrote it, but then I had to take it out. So I wanted her to be she's totally involved with everything, and so that was the thing. So for me, yeah, BG definitely reminds me of both my grandmoms.
That was some interesting backstory. I am earmarking this show. I definitely
Please do.
YouTube. Is it available on YouTube? Okay,
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
I'll definitely check it out. So, Shalini, as we discussed, you've been writing on themes that are deeply emotional and personal. So, how do you ensure authenticity and sensitivity in your portrayal? Because these themes require to be handled very delicately while writing, without going overboard or without sounding on the other end as well.
True. So I'll take the sensitivity part first. As I said, first, I don't judge my own characters.
Yeah.
I try not to. And if I feel that I'm becoming too judgmental or I am delivering a statement about their character or about their personality directly to the reader, I try and cut it out. And that happens. I mean, that happens. And then I feel that, no, I should not say that this, I should let the reader come to that. And yeah, it's more of a, rather than a very, I don't know how I do it, but by the time it's written the second or the third time, it begins to have that feel to it, that cadence to it. Reading it out helps. Using the text to speech thing, sorry, really helps because that adds a bit of emotion. And this is something that I learned recently when I was doing one of the courses we just talked about. Speech developed before writing, right? So we do listen, we do, that is a very important thing. So I feel that sometimes reading out these scenes help because, if they're too bland, it'll come through. Of course, it's a very broad thing, but so I try that. I think part of it is my natural style of writing. So I'm not really thought too much about how I do it, but I know if it's not going right. The authenticity part, okay, so this is very difficult to put into words, even though I say I'm a writer. But the authenticity part is you have to lay yourself totally vulnerable on the page. Totally. You have to be completely raw, almost like a naked vulnerability. After that, some of it may not come onto the paper. And for that, for drafting the scene, writing with pen and paper helps because you're more rooted, more connected, at least for me. But there has to be nothing left in you that you've not processed about a scene, about a moment, about how you would have felt in that particular scene. Some scenes are actually taken from stuff that happened to me and things that I felt, which I'm able to now put on other people's characters and get away with. So, but you have to be completely vulnerable. You just have to let yourself go. And it's a very emotionally, it's not a very emotionally draining, it's a wrenching kind of an exercise. But it is what it is, and we do what we have to do. So
True. So, Shalini, this is your second book. How has your journey as an author evolved over time, and what have you learned from your previous work?
so first is that it's, I mean, the journey has been unbelievable. I never thought that anyone would want to read what I had written. So, so the fact that my first book got so much love, and that those words connected with so many people, I think it, and I'm saying this for the first time, and I think I can only say it because you're the one asking me this question. I think it stopped me from disintegrating,
Wow.
because I came to writing at a very, very vulnerable stage of my life. I never imagined I would be a writer. I don't know how it happened, honestly. I mean, and I think it saved me. I think it gave me a whole new part of myself to discover and build on. So it's been absolutely something which is very, very precious to me. It's not about how many copies or ranking or nothing like that. It's just on a deeply personal level. I think it truly saved me. I would have been lost. Secondly, what I've learned is that it's okay if people take your characters to be different from what you intended them to be. And this is not the same thing as people not liking your book. That is, of course, another journey for every author, which comes in its own way. So, with my first book, the three people that I was writing about, I was very clear about what I was doing with them, right? But people reacted to them in very different ways. There were people who, for example, judged Mahima for doing what she did. Then there were people who actually called her weak because she did not, take her relationship to the final conclusion, which is all something that they're entitled to. So similarly with the second character, Rachna, some people had issues about what she had done. And initially I would try and defend my characters, because for me, they were operating all in a state, this thing of gray. I was like, no, it can't be black or white. But then I let it be, because the reader's coming from their own space. The reader's coming from with whatever baggage or lack of it that they have. And it's okay. It has to be okay. That just means that the character resonated with them differently.
Yeah.
And I have to let them do that. I mean, my book is not my book only anymore. So that was a very important learning, because it frees you up. It liberates you. So next time, you don't want them to think in a particular way. Like you said, next time, you're free to think whatever. You're free to think Neil is a sissy. Your wish. You're free to think, like someone told me, why is Roy so grumpy? Like, yeah, okay, that's the way he is. Don't you know any grumpy people around you? Right? So he doesn't have to be a particular way for you to continue remaining engaged in my story. You make whatever you want out of it. So these two, this learning and honestly the love that I got, um, they have been the most precious things to me.
I remember doing a writing course where this was one of the lessons that was taught to us. There were two actually, and that I remember very, very strongly. One is that once you finish the book and it is published, the story, the characters, nothing is yours. It's over to the readers, whatever they make of it. You might have written a love story. They might actually just see tragedy. They might not find love. They might find love. There are a lot of interpretations which they are free and they have the right. A writer just starts the story. A reader is the one who finishes it. So it's theirs.
Yeah.
The characters are theirs to love, to hate, to dislike or to disregard completely. So I can understand where you're coming from. And the other is, of course, that you should never try to take any of your writing personally, any of the feedback personally, the writing
Yeah.
personally, anything that happens personally in the writing. So
But that is easier said than done. I mean, it just cuts like a knife.
Absolutely.
And then you tell yourself all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are writers who still say that, how do you do that? Even people like who won Booker Prizes or nominations, that they still, we can't do that. We cannot detach. I think that is a problem with all the artists, I guess. Even like actors who do movies or musicians, whenever you create something, no, it's the closest you come to giving birth, like what you do as a human. And then when you have to disassociate emotionally, it's chaos. That's where
Yeah, send it out into the world and see,
yeah,
So,
what happens? So that I understand. I can relate to that lesson. So the way home delves into the concept of self-discovery and healing. How do you personally relate to these themes and what significance do they hold for you?
I relate to them very, very strongly. Because I do believe that none of us, I think very few of us are actually living out to the potential that we have. We all have a lot of inner courage, inner conviction, which we are too scared to discover. And I use the word courage and scared in the same sentence, but that is the truth. So it's very important to me that you discover yourself. And especially, I see this more in women. I see this more in women with families. I did a very simple exercise once upon a time. I did this thing. I started asking myself, would I be doing this if there was nothing around me telling me to do it? Something very simple. Would I be, for example, buying this kind of grocery? I mean, who am I? Who am I without the influences of the world? Who am I the way I started out as a person? And I'm honestly telling you, I've been through so much in my life. I don't remember the 20-year-old me. And I feel sad because I feel that she deserved to be remembered. I don't remember her. I mean, if you ask me what kind of a person were you, I honestly don't know. We allow ourselves to get lost. And then we try and find the way home, right? So it's very important for me. And now I take it like this, and it's okay. What happened is okay. But now we have to discover ourselves. So who is Shalini? Is she the doctor? Is she the writer? Is she the mom? Because especially being wives and moms, it consumes us, I feel. So, but beyond that, who are you? What do you like to do? What do you enjoy? So I'm sorry to digress, but it is about self-discovery. So I went to Dharamshala alone 2 years back. I just decided to have my own me vacation. My children are teenagers. They were teenagers then also. So they're pretty cool with me not being around. And it was the most liberating time of my life, probably, because I was not responding to anyone. It's not like if I go with my children or my family or even with my friends, I'm having fun, but I'm always responding to somebody else. Even if I'm with a friend, it'll be like, oh, you want to eat this? I want to eat that. Okay, let's do this. I was not responding to anybody. I was responding only to myself. So that's the kind of thing you have to find out about yourself. What is it that you like, independent of the rest of the world? And so that's what self discovery is about for me. And I think it's very important because it's very empowering. And I think all of us should try and do that. Healing is very important because if you don't heal, you hang on. And it's not, for me, healing is a journey like grief. I don't think any of us heals completely. But we just try and make sense of that journey, and that's enough. That is enough. So healing for me is very important because otherwise something's always going to keep weighing you down. And when it weighs you down, you're not going to discover yourself. So the two go together. You start healing, you start letting go, and it's not an easy thing to let go. But when you do it, and it's very scary when you do it. It's very, very scary when you do it. But when you do it, it makes you much, much stronger. And you discover the strong you. So both the things are very important for me. And that's why I wanted in this book, I wanted that to come through that it's not going to be easy. I cannot offer a quick fix solution. If I could, I would have offered it to myself and to those around me. So it's going to be starting and stopping, and it's going to be a task, but it's going to be worth it. So.
This is such a beautiful answer, I must tell you. I wrote about this yesterday. I actually wrote a very long, detailed note on my personal Instagram caption is where, a lot of people of my age or younger, when they discuss some things to me, they are surprised that my reaction is very which is not related to anger or which is not hurt or anything. When I talk about incidences that make them go like, oh my God, this makes me so angry. And so then I wrote that, it's been 2 decades of my healing. I started questioning things almost close to 2 decades ago. So I am at a very different phase. I'm not saying my healing is over or I am ahead or you are not healed, but we are at different stages. So maybe by the time you are so deep into your healing, you would also process it differently. You will be able to look at it very neutrally, standing away and looking at like a third person that, okay, this happened. Now let's analyze this problem and not react without, have any emotions involved. So I understand when you say that, we all don't have the courage sometimes. And sometimes it's just that, what I had read is that the comfort that the situation gives us, that we believe this to be normal. So anything outside this is
Yeah.
what scares us. And that fear is what stops us from trying to make it, solve the problem or look at it differently apart as a problem.
Absolutely. It's the fear of the unknown. We
Yes.
don't know what's going to meet us there, what we are going to meet there. So then that's why, when people talk about bad relationships or whatever, and they say, why didn't you leave? I get really mad. I mean,
It's
do
not
you
easy.
not get it? They obviously don't, but it's not so simple. Like you say, we're just so enmeshed in that because that becomes a normal, and that's just the way things are. So, and once you begin to heal, you begin to, like you said, the first thing is to question. That itself is huge. So if you can do that, you will eventually start that journey. And like you said, yeah, I mean, it takes time. So I guess, everyone is on a different route.
Yeah, and that I realized in one of the groups that I was a part of. There was a 70-year-old lady who said, I've just started my healing and I'm yet, I'm now feeling bad that I didn't start it earlier. And I'm like, okay, so there are people who are lost even at 70. It's not that when I get there, I'll know everything. Because when we are young, you've been told that you 50 ke ho jaoge, you'll have all the knowledge of the world. You'll understand everything. You'll never make a wrong decision in life. You will know perfectly
No,
how
no, no,
much dal
nothing
to
looks like
bigao
that.
for this. They have like a quick answer to everything. No, you will know which guy is right when they walk in. At 40, you will know how much dal to cook, how for 20 people, and you have all the answers by your 50. That's how you look at the world. So I was like,
I
okay,
swear.
so you
But
still
that's
tell
not
me.
how it works.
Yeah, unfortunately, I realized it. So when I heard that, I'm like, okay, so we all start, but we start. Whatever it is, but we start. So that gives me hope somewhere.
I'm telling you this. Age has nothing to do with this. All of
Yeah.
us are the same old massive protoplasm of emotions. Okay. When you're an adult, you're just supposed to like put it together. You can't let go of your emotions at the drop of a hat like a 4-year-old can. You're just supposed to contain it in that little box that is you. In my case, not so little. But we're just a confused mess of emotions. That's it.
Very true.
So
Very true.
on that note, I still remember my brother. He's a doctor in the US now. He's 5 years younger to me. So I remember when he turned 18, everyone was like, how are you feeling? तुझे कैसा लग रहा है? This guy just looks around and he says, वैसा ही जैसे कल लग रहा था. What am I supposed to do?
Is exactly like that joke, behave your age. How do I know I've been this age for the first time? How are people this age behaving? How am I supposed to know? It's just like
How do
that.
you know how you're supposed to feel when you're 30, 40, 50, 60? Arey, yaar, I feel the same.
So when
Just a
that
little more
lady
tired
said
in
that,
my
it
bones.
was really eye-opening. And I was like, oh wow. So then, maybe that's when I understood the importance of communities. That it's not important only to talk or to share, but also to just listen. Sometimes those communities are important. Like she was seeing
Absolutely.
something at 70, which maybe I'm seeing at 40. So I was like, oh wow, okay. So we are seeing some problem that is there. People relate to me at different ages. They respond differently to it. That gave me some hope. That gave me like, okay, we are doing good. It's fine. We are on the right track.
At least at least we figured out that something needs to be done. There are so many people who haven't even figured that
Yeah.
out.
So that lady was
So
actually targeting all us youngsters, and she was literally telling that you are very lucky that you are here. You've realized that you've started questioning things very early. I regret that I didn't. And I was like, okay, this is a different perspective. I never thought about it from this angle, no? That it's sometimes your life gets over and you don't realize a lot of things.
actually, you have to suspend all your beliefs, all your judgment, and then only see, you have to wipe it clean now. You can't rewrite on what's already been written. So
True.
I guess, and the other thing, you have to enjoy the journey while you're doing it because it's going to take a lot of time. So you might as well have some fun along the way.
Absolutely. Very true. So this brings us to the last question, Shalini. What role do you believe literature and storytelling play in addressing mental health and emotional well-being?
A lot, a lot. I think from the time we are kids, stories bring us a lot of solace, right? I mean, whether it's bedtime stories, stories are also, I mean, when you read together as a child, that is also a very emotional thing that you do with someone, whether whoever it is. So they have a lot of role to play. More than that, they're highlighting today's world. They're representative of today's world. So we're writing about relationships, if you're writing about love outside marriage, like I did, or if you're writing about Roy and his troubles, or Neil and his troubles, that is exactly what is happening around us in society, whether we like it or not. And it's time that we know what's happening around us. And so that's very important. Emotional well-being, absolutely. Books and stories, I think they've saved all our lives so many times, right? Their comfort, they are sorts of complete comfort, complete escape. In that sense, a lot of emotional well-being. But in terms of literature, you're contributing to literally a commentary of society around you. And so you have to. So there comes a responsibility. There comes a responsibility that you have to write without judgment. You have to write without being critical of a particular group or a community. You should not perpetuate, things which are against someone, or, I mean, you cannot put unresearched or unverified facts out there, because you are reflecting how things in our world are and how people are responding to them. So they're very, very important. So yeah, why? Because we're doing something so important, we have that basic responsibility. And I think that storytelling, not just writing, telling stories is a lot. It's very empowering, because when we tell our stories, they resonate. Even if I'm writing a character, they're resonating with someone. For example, with my first book, I had someone come and tell me that I had exactly the same relationship with somebody as the first protagonist, as Gitika. And she's like, always felt ashamed. Reading your book made me realize that there's nothing to feel ashamed. It's like, no, there isn't. But each person is carrying so much within them. You don't know what part of your writing resonates with whom. So they're very, very important. And about mental health, I think it is very, very important to destigmatize mental health. We need to bring it in the normal conversations. We need to uh, not stereotype these things when we are bringing them into the conversation. So that is very important.
So, Shalini, any last thoughts for the viewers before we wrap this up?
Nothing, no, really. I had a really lovely time talking to you.
It was a
And
brilliant discussion. It just felt wonderful. It didn't feel, that we haven't spoken in a while or we haven't connected in a while. And I'm so glad that we did it this way, very honest conversation. I'll link
I
all the links to the books, the social media, your social media handles, your website, and everything will be there in the description box. To all the viewers, please do read the books that Shalini has written. She's done a terrific job at that, and do leave a review. That's what keeps the writers afloat. Thank you so much, Shalini, for this
Thank you,
honest,
Namrata.
hard
Thank you for
conversation.
having me here. Yeah, I think I did share some things for probably the first time in my life here. And I think you're the reason for that, because I
Thank
mean,
you. Thank you so
we
much.
feel so comfortable. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening to us, and pick up the books if you've liked the conversation. And thank you once more, Namrata, for having me here.
Thank you.